Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Michael Reed was dying. He had been living in the military hospital for 3 months. Once, his tall and upright body had stood firm and proud on the training field. Now, illness had reduced him to skin and bones. Lying in that snow-white hospital bed, he looked as if he could fall apart at any moment. I had already buried his parents, raised our son and daughter with my own hands. And now I was here again taking care of him day and night. From black hair to gray, 50 years had passed. Everyone said I was the model of a devoted wife, the greatest blessing the Reed family had earned in generations. Today, his energy seemed strangely better, as if it were the final burst before death. Our children, with eyes swollen red from crying, stood at his bedside while he looked past them, his cloudy eyes fixed on me. The blinking light on the monitor pulsed faintly, the only sound in the room, the only sign of life between us. I thought there was something he wanted to tell me privately, something a husband says to his wife at the very end. Out of habit, I leaned forward, wanting to straighten his pillow, and asked softly, "Michael, are you uncomfortable anywhere?" But suddenly, with the last of his strength, he grabbed my wrist. His thin, bony fingers clamped down like rusted iron pliers, sinking deep into my flesh. The pain made me shudder. "Evelyn," he said, each word dragged out slowly. In the eyes I had looked into for 50 years, I saw something I had never seen before. A hatred so fierce it could have burned me to ashes. "The biggest regret of my life," he rasped, "was marrying you." My mind buzzed like a hammer had struck it. For a moment everything went blank. He looked at my pale face, and a faint, twisted satisfaction appeared in his eyes. A hoarse laugh rattled from his throat, wet, broken, and filled with phlegm like air whistling through a cracked beehive. Then he forced out his words again, every syllable scraping against his lungs. Anna White should have been my wife. My Mrs. Reed. If you hadn't interfered all those years ago, she wouldn't have. That name, Anna White, stabbed into my heart like an icicle buried there for 50 years, and he, with his dying breath, had twisted it cruelly. The poison spread instantly through my whole body. She was his distant cousin who had died young, the one he used to whisper about when he was drunk, the one he called pure and gentle, his eternal light. Every year, without fail, through wind or rain, he went to her grave and sat there for half a day. For 50 years I had been a fool. Not only had I never doubted him, but I had even gone with him to mourn her. I sighed for that poor kind girl who died too young, the girl he spoke of with pity and tenderness. I even gave our daughter the middle name and, just to comfort the regret I thought he carried in his heart. But it wasn't mourning. It was longing. The 50 years I had spent managing the household, caring for his parents, raising our children, devoting everything to him. All of it, in his eyes, had been nothing more than a cuckoo taking another bird's nest. A mistake that lasted half a century, standing between him and his true love. Everything I had given, every sacrifice, every act of endurance was nothing but a cruel joke. A wave of hatred and absurdity swallowed me whole. My heart felt like it was being crushed by an invisible hand, torn apart from the inside. Even breathing tasted like blood. My vision blurred, and the shrill alarm of the monitor filled my ears, the last sound before I slipped away into nothingness. "Evelyn, hey, what are you daydreaming for? It's our turn. Come on." A familiar, youthful voice rang beside me. A warm, strong hand pushed at my shoulder impatiently. I gasped and opened my eyes. The pale hospital room was gone. It wasn't a hospital room or the blinding shadowless lamp anymore. Instead, I was standing in a room with a sign that read, Revolutionary Committee Office. The air was thick with the smell of old paper, red ink, and a faint trace of sweat. On the wall hung bright red slogans. Grasp revolution, promote production. The words were sharp and glaring. A young man in a crisp white shirt stood before me, frowning slightly as he looked at me. His straight brows and high nose. He looked exactly like the man I remembered at his most handsome, Michael Reed. Instinctively, I looked down at my own hands. They were fair and smooth, full of youthful vitality. My nails were healthy and pink. Not a single wrinkle or age spot in sight. I was wearing a blue synthetic fabric dress, one my mother had the cloth for, brought from Shanghai and sewn by hand. On the table lay a thin sheet of new paper stamped with a bright red seal. At the top were the words Marriage Application Report. The date read summer 1977. I was back. I had returned 50 years into the past to the very day we had just submitted our marriage application. The day we were about to receive our marriage certificate. Comrades, your application has been approved. Congratulations to both of you. Another fine couple joining the path of revolution. The clerk, a cheerful, broad-smiling woman, handed that sheet of paper, the one that had decided the tragedy of my previous life, into Michael Reed's waiting hands. Michael's face lit up with delight, the smile in his eyes nearly overflowing. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out, his voice quivering with excitement. Thank you, comrade. Those were the same hands that 50 years later would grip my wrist like iron tongues and say the cruelest words in the world. That same smiling face, so full of joy now, would 50 years later twist into hatred as he told me he had never loved me, that I was nothing but a shameful substitute. Just as Michael's fingertips were about to touch that paper, my cold voice broke through the air, sharp and sudden as a shard of ice smashing into a room filled with happiness. Michael and the clerk both froze, stunned. I slowly stood up, met the confused look in Michael's eyes, and turned directly toward the clerk. My voice was calm, firm, and unyielding. Comrade, hello. We just talked it over. We've decided not to get married. What? Michael's smile froze on his face. He turned to me in shock, his voice cracking. Evelyn, what nonsense are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Are you overheated? I couldn't even be bothered to look at his fake, panicked face. I kept my gaze fixed steadily on the clerk. The clerk looked flustered, glancing from me to Michael. But the report's already approved. The organization has recognized it. You can't just say you're not getting married. Young people, marriage isn't something to play with. Exactly. Because it's not a game, I said evenly, pulling my hand free from Michael's instinctive grip. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough to fill the entire room. That's why we need to be cautious. I finally understand today that Michael Reed and I, given our differences in ideology, family background, and future life goals, are fundamentally incompatible. A hasty marriage would be irresponsible not only to ourselves, but also to the army and to the country. We can't let personal feelings trouble the organization. Therefore, after careful consideration, we've decided not to get married. My words were logical, proper, and unassailable. Michael's face turned the color of raw liver. Shock and humiliation twisted across his features as he leaned toward me, lowering his voice in a furious whisper. Evelyn, have you gone insane? Didn't you just tell me yesterday that you'd never marry anyone but me? Michael's voice trembled with anger. What is this? Are you trying to humiliate me in front of everyone? I finally turned my head to look at him, the corners of my lips curling into a cold, cutting smile. Yes, in my past life that was exactly what I had said. And because of those words I made a fool of myself for 50 years. Comrade Michael Reed, I said, deliberately widening the distance between us. My voice was calm and distinct, every word enunciated. Please watch your language. Revolutionary comrades shouldn't indulge in bourgeois romantic nonsense. We were only seeing each other through an organizational introduction. Now that I've realized we're not compatible, I want to stop the loss in time and end this relationship. Is there a problem with that? A sharp echoing slap cracked through the air. My hand had struck Michael Reed's face hard. He was completely speechless, stunned by my righteous tone. His handsome face turned pale, then flushed, colors shifting like a storm. I no longer cared about the anger or humiliation twisting his features. I reached past him, took the still fresh marriage application from the stunned clerk's hands, and ripped it cleanly in half, then into quarters and finally into a pile of small scraps, which I tossed casually into the trash bin in the corner. There, I said, brushing my hands together as if dusting off invisible dirt. Without a backward glance, I turned and walked toward the door. Summer sunlight poured in from outside, warm and dazzling. I narrowed my eyes slightly and took a deep breath. It was the scent of freedom, of a new beginning. Behind me came Michael Reed's furious shouting and the clerk's anxious attempts to calm him down. But none of it had anything to do with me anymore. This time I thought, Michael Reed and Anna White, your tragic, destined love story can stay locked away forever. Don't ever come near me again. I had just stepped out the door of the office, barely taken a few steps, when someone grabbed my wrist hard from behind. Evelyn, you owe me an explanation. Michael's eyes were bloodshot, glaring at me with barely restrained rage. His handsome face was twisted with fury. What do you take me for? You want to get married, we get married. You don't. Then we don't. Am I just some toy for you to play with? I yanked my hand free with force, my gaze colder than his. Michael Reed, let go, I said sharply. There's nothing between us now. Please have some self-respect. Self-respect? He gave a sharp, humorless laugh. Who was it yesterday holding my hand, saying she'd follow me for life? And now you just turn your face and pretend you don't know me. Evelyn, I really underestimated you. You change faces faster than flipping a page. People nearby had started to look over curiously. I knew what that meant. In this era, a woman's reputation was everything, and Michael knew that too. That's why he dared to shout like this here, trying to force me to back down. Too bad for him. He was facing a woman who had already died once. A woman who no longer cared about her pride. Comrade Michael Reed, I said, folding my arms and meeting his eyes coldly. You're right. I did say those words yesterday, but after thinking it over carefully all night, I realized I was wrong. I can't destroy both our futures over a moment of impulse. You're a promising officer. You should marry someone who can help your career. Not someone like me who has nothing to offer but a family background and ordinary factory work. As for me, I continued after a pause, I've also thought it through. Rather than being a military wife, I'd rather contribute to our country's 4 modernizations. I stopped for a moment, watching Michael's face grow darker and darker. I twisted the knife with deliberate precision. In the end, I said calmly, we simply want different things. We're not the same kind of people. You can't force something that isn't meant to be. An unwilling melon is never sweet. You of all people should understand that, shouldn't you? Then I lowered my voice just enough for only the two of us to hear. After all, there's always been someone else living in your heart. Hasn't there? Michael's pupils contracted sharply. The color drained completely from his face as he stared at me like he'd just seen a ghost. It was clear he never imagined that the secret buried in the deepest part of his heart could be exposed so casually, as if it were nothing. You, how do you know? His lips trembled, unable to form a full sentence. Seeing his panic, a rush of vindictive satisfaction surged through me. No. I tilted my head innocently, blinking like a harmless little rabbit. I don't know anything. I just feel that we're not suitable for each other. Then smiling faintly, I added, Captain Reed, I wish you a bright future and that you find a wife who truly suits you. Goodbye. Without giving him another chance to respond, I turned and walked away, my steps light and steady, leaving him and his cursed love completely behind me. When I returned to the residential compound, the news that I had broken off the engagement had already spread like wildfire. The moment I stepped through the gate, I saw Michael's mother, Mrs. Reed, standing at my door with her hands on her hips like a hen, ready to fight. A few of the army wives she often gossiped with flanked her, all glaring at me as if ready to pounce. Mrs. Reed was infamous in the compound, sharp-tongued and merciless. She could talk a living man to death or talk a dead one back to life. In my previous life, I had suffered plenty under her tongue. The moment she saw me, she raised her voice to a piercing shriek that could cut through 3 buildings. Well, if it isn't Miss Chin herself back so soon. What's the matter? Is our little Reed family temple too small to hold such a grand Buddha like you? You say you won't marry and that's that? You think you can just toy with our Michael like he's some fool? Neighbors started poking their heads out from windows and doorways, eager for gossip. Fingers pointed, whispers spread. This Evelyn girl's gone too far. The marriage report's already been filed. How can she just back out now? Exactly. What does she think Captain Reed is? Some nobody. He's young, successful. Where's he going to find a better match than her? She must just be acting up. Let her cool off for a bit. She'll come around. Mrs. Reed listened to the murmuring crowd, looking more and more smug, as if she already had me cornered. She was certain that a young girl like me would be too embarrassed to stand up to all this public pressure, that I'd bow my head and apologize just to save face. My parents, both intellectuals, were standing helplessly by the door, sweating nervously. They kept glancing at me, silently begging me to apologize and end the scene. But I acted as if I hadn't seen them. I walked straight up to Mrs. Reed, calm and composed, even wearing a polite smile. "Mrs. Reed," I said evenly, "I think you've misunderstood. What happened between Captain Reed and me was a decision we made together. How could that possibly mean I was playing with him?" Mrs. Reed barked out a laugh as if I had just told the funniest joke in the world. "Evelyn, you really do have a talent for making yourself look good. You were the one who caused a scene at the office, tore up the marriage report in front of everyone, and now you're saying Michael agreed to it. Who do you think you're fooling?" "Mrs. Reed," I said sweetly, tilting my head slightly, "how do you know I tore up the report at the office? Were you there at the time?" I paused, still smiling. "Did Captain Reed run straight to you the moment he walked out just to complain?" My words caught her completely off guard. Mrs. Reed's face darkened, but I didn't give her a chance to catch her breath. I went on calmly, twisting the knife further. "A grown man gets into a small argument with his fiancée," I said evenly, "and instead of communicating like an adult and solving it, the first thing he does is run home to complain to his mother." Mrs. Reed agreed. "Don't you think your son still hasn't been weaned? I certainly wouldn't dare marry a mama's boy. If we argued after marriage, would you come charging over like today, bringing people with you to block my door and fight my battles for him?" As soon as the words left my mouth, the courtyard fell completely silent. Everyone stared at Mrs. Reed and at Michael Reed, standing behind her in stiff, speechless embarrassment. The term mama's boy was new in that era, but everyone understood what it meant. They'd all seen men who couldn't take a step without their mother's approval, and everyone knew that kind of marriage brought nothing but misery. Mrs. Reed's face flushed red, then turned white. Her whole body trembled with rage. You're talking nonsense, you rude little girl, spewing filth from your mouth." "I don't think it's nonsense," I replied, standing straight, my voice clear and firm. "Everyone here knows the truth." I swept my gaze slowly across the crowd. "Uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters. This matter between me and Captain Reed is between our two families. We realized our personalities don't match and decided to part ways. That's our mutual choice. Marriage is a serious matter. It determines a lifetime of happiness. We can't joke about it just because we're afraid of gossip." Then, shifting tone, I turned my gaze back to Mrs. Reed, my eyes turning cold. "I may not be some pampered Aries, but my parents raised me as their treasure. I'm not marrying into the Reed family to be some servant, someone you can order around. If your son wants to marry me, he should show sincerity and respect. If he can't do that, then it's better we don't marry at all." My words rang out loud and clear, resolute and sharp. The murmurs in the crowd shifted instantly. "Evelyn's right. Marriage isn't something to fool around with. If they're not compatible, better to end it now." "Exactly. Mrs. Reed's always been too overbearing. If Evelyn had married into that house, she'd never have had a peaceful life. And Captain Reed too, letting his mother make a scene like this. It's disgraceful." Mrs. Reed hadn't expected that quiet, well-behaved me could have such a sharp tongue. With just a few words I had turned the whole situation around. Her lips trembled with fury as she jabbed a finger toward my face. "Fine, Evelyn. Just you wait. You think breaking off the engagement will be that easy? You'll have to return every bit of the dowry our family gave you." Ah, there it was. Resorting to shameless tricks again. In my past life she'd used the same move, wringing every penny out of my parents. The gifts, the savings, even the money they'd given to help us start a home. I let out a cold laugh. "Mrs. Reed, you must be mistaken. We only filed a marriage report. We never even got to the engagement stage. When exactly did your family give mine a dowry? Why don't I know about it? Was it gold bars, silver coins? Go on, show everyone here. Let them all see." In those days times were tough. A dowry usually meant a few new sets of clothes, a wristwatch, maybe a bicycle at most. The Reeds had indeed sent over a few things back then, but that was nowhere near what anyone would call a dowry. Mrs. Reed's mouth opened and closed without a sound. She couldn't possibly admit that all they'd given were a few yards of fabric and some candy. That would be too humiliating. You're twisting words," she sputtered. "I'm just telling the truth," I said coolly, taking a step forward and looking her straight in the eye. "Mrs. Reed, let's make this clear today in front of everyone here in the compound. Between me and Captain Reed, it's over. From now on, our paths in marriage and life are separate. We have nothing to do with each other. If your Reed family dares to come to my home again, making trouble and trying to ruin my reputation," I said coldly, "then don't blame me for being impolite. I won't hesitate to report certain matters to the higher-ups in the army." I deliberately emphasized those two words, certain matters, and my gaze shifted, full of implication toward Michael Reed standing behind his mother. His whole body stiffened. The color drained from his face, turning deathly pale. He knew exactly what I was referring to. Anna White. If this got out, if word reached the military leadership that he had been courting an official match arranged by the organization while still maintaining an ambiguous relationship with his cousin, his position as a captain would be finished. In the army, issues of personal conduct were serious. Career-ending serious. No matter how fierce Mrs. Reed usually was, she knew perfectly well which lines could never be crossed. Once her son's future was on the line, she instantly deflated. She shot me a venomous glare but didn't dare say another word. Grabbing Michael by the arm, she dragged him away, both of them leaving with their tails between their legs. And just like that, the farce came to an end. My parents pulled me inside the house. My mother's eyes were red with anxiety, her voice trembling. "Evelyn, how could you be so impulsive? Look what you've done. Breaking off the engagement like this. What about your reputation now?" I held her hands, looking into her worried face, and felt a wave of ache in my chest. In my previous life, it was exactly because I feared their worry, feared them losing face, that I had swallowed every insult from the Reed family for years, only to end up dying miserably. "Mom," I said quietly, "can a reputation feed me? Just for the sake of some hollow name, should I marry a man who doesn't love me, who keeps another woman in his heart, and spend my whole life being humiliated in his house? Would you want that for me?" My mother froze, speechless. My father sighed, patted my shoulder and said, "Enough, honey. Our daughter's right. It's us who've been too old-fashioned. If she can be happy, that's what matters most. If she doesn't want to marry him, then she doesn't. A daughter of the Chin family will never lack for suitors." Hearing my parents' support, the last stone in my heart finally settled. For the first time I could truly breathe. My life could finally begin again. In the following days, rumors about me spread through the residential compound like wildfire. Some said I'd climbed too high and now looked down on Captain Reed. Others said I was fickle and unrestrained. The nastier ones claimed I must have done something shameful outside and been caught by the Reeds, which was why they'd broken off the engagement. Mrs. Reed, of course, fanned the flames behind my back, painting me as a shallow, immoral woman who despised the poor and worshipped the rich, while her son became the poor, pitiful man who had been betrayed. I ignored it all. People's mouths belonged to them. I couldn't control what they said. The only thing I could do was live my own life well, and let the truth shut them up. Being reborn, my greatest advantage was the memory of the decades yet to come. I knew that this very winter, the country would resume the college entrance exam, the Gaokao, after a 10-year suspension. It would be a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change countless people's fates. In my past life, I had given up that chance for the sake of marrying Michael Reed. It had become my lifelong regret. In this life, I would never make that mistake again. I locked myself in my room and began rummaging through boxes for my old high school textbooks. Thankfully, my mother was meticulous. She had wrapped all my books neatly in paper and stored them safely at the bottom of a chest. They were all perfectly preserved. As I looked at those familiar formulas and words, my heart surged with excitement. I would go to college. I would go to the capital. I would leave this place that had trapped all my nightmares in the last life. But my peaceful days didn't last long. Trouble came knocking on its own. That afternoon, I was in my room studying when a commotion suddenly rose from the courtyard. Moments later, my front door was flung open with a loud bang. Frowning, I stepped out and froze. A girl in a white dress stood at the doorway, her hair in 2 long braids. Her face was delicate but pale, and her eyes brimmed with tears, her whole body trembling as though a light breeze could knock her down. Behind her stood Michael Reed, his expression a mix of anger and heartbreak, and beside him Mrs. Reed, looking smug and eager for a show. The yard was already filled with curious neighbors crowding in to watch. I narrowed my eyes. Anna White, so she had come. In my previous life, I had only ever heard her name, never seen her in person. Michael had always said she was sick and living in the countryside, recovering. I never imagined that in this lifetime she would appear before me so soon. Evelyn, Anna began, her voice trembling as if she might cry. It was soft, fragile, like a tiny white flower swaying helplessly in the wind. Please, I'm begging you. Don't break up with Michael. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come here. If my presence has caused any misunderstanding between you two, I'll never forgive myself. As she spoke, tears spilled down her cheeks like broken pearls. Her fragile sincerity could have melted the heart of anyone watching. The neighbors immediately began whispering among themselves. Who's that girl? She's so pretty. Sounds like she's the reason Evelyn and Captain Reed broke up. Oh my, looks like we've got a love triangle on our hands. Michael instantly stepped forward, shielding Anna behind him like her guardian angel, glaring at me with righteous fury. Evelyn, if you have a problem, take it out on me, he snapped. Don't make things hard for Anna. She's in poor health. She can't handle your temper. A perfect performance. What a touching scene of a hero protecting his delicate damsel. Mrs. Reed immediately joined in, dabbing at imaginary tears with her handkerchief. Oh, what terrible sins have I committed? Our poor Anna has been frail since childhood. She only came to the city for treatment, and now she has to suffer such injustice. Evelyn, what has our Reed family ever done to you for you to torment us like this? The three of them, mother, son, and poor cousin, played their parts flawlessly, singing in harmony. In an instant they painted me as a heartless, unreasonable woman who bullied a weak and sickly girl. If this were my past life, the old Evelyn would have been struck dumb by such an ambush, unable to defend herself while they dumped all their filth on me. But not this time. I watched their pathetic little performance and almost laughed. Slowly I stepped down the stairs and walked toward Anna White, a faintly concerned smile curving my lips. You must be Anna, I said gently. The cousin Mrs. Reed often talks about, right? My calmness clearly startled her. She blinked and nodded awkwardly. Yes, Evelyn. Oh, how funny, I exclaimed in mock surprise, taking her hand warmly. Just the other day I was telling Captain Reed, since you two are so close and he clearly can't stop thinking about you, why doesn't he just marry you instead? It would make a perfect story. Family marrying into family, so touching and convenient. The words had barely left my mouth when the entire courtyard went dead silent. Every single person turned to look at me with stunned, almost ghost-struck expressions. Michael and Anna's faces instantly turned white. In this era, though marriages between cousins still occasionally happened, they were no longer encouraged, especially not in a military compound. If such talk spread, it would be considered scandalous. My words sounded like a kind and innocent suggestion, but in truth, they branded their so-called sibling affection with a big murky stain. You're lying, Michael shouted, trembling with anger. When did I ever say anything like that? You didn't. I tilted my head and blinked innocently. Maybe I remembered wrong, but that doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is what you two think and what you've been doing. My gaze slid meaningfully toward the two of them, their bodies standing close together and Michael's hand still resting protectively on Anna's shoulder. Anna flinched as if burned, jerking away from him. Her face went paper white. No, Evelyn, you've got it wrong. There's nothing between us. Michael and I, we're innocent. Innocent. I smiled slowly, the kind of smile that carried layers of meaning. My dear, innocence isn't something you can claim just by saying it. You're an unmarried young woman, yet you've been living under the same roof as your cousin, who was about to get married, no less. You go out together during the day, come home together at night, and who knows what happens then if people start talking. What do you think they'll say? And what will you think? Then I turned to Michael, my voice calm but carrying through the courtyard like a clap of thunder. Captain Reed. The word hit like a bomb. The crowd's expressions shifted, their gazes suddenly curious and suggestive, darting back and forth between the two of them. Yeah, someone muttered under their breath. What's that cousin doing living with him anyway? A man and woman alone. Doesn't look right. No wonder Evelyn broke off the engagement. Now it all makes sense. If it were me, I'd do the same. Under the weight of the neighbor's stares, Anna began to tremble all over, her tears flowing harder, sobs shaking her frail shoulders. She turned helplessly toward Michael, silently begging for rescue. Michael's face was twisted with fury and humiliation. His pride as a soldier couldn't bear those suspicious looks. He'd never imagined that instead of being the one to frame me, I would turn everything back on him with just a few words. "Evelyn," he said through gritted teeth, his voice low and shaking with rage. "Don't you dare slander us. Anna only came to the city for medical treatment. She's been staying at my house temporarily. There's nothing improper between us. We're perfectly decent." "Medical treatment?" I repeated, my eyes lighting up as if intrigued. "Oh, what illness? Is it serious? Which hospital is she seeing? The military hospital, right? Which doctor? Do you need me to accompany your cousin for her checkup?" My barrage of questions made Anna retreat step by step, her face turning even paler. Of course, she wasn't in the city for treatment at all. That was just the excuse they'd used to justify her living in Michael's house. Seeing that things were about to spiral completely out of control, Mrs. Reed quickly jumped in to smooth things over. "That's a private family matter. We don't need an outsider meddling in our business. Evelyn, let me tell you, today we're only here to ask you one thing. Are you still marrying my son or not?" She was trying desperately to drag the topic back to where she could control it. Too bad for her. I wasn't giving her that chance. "Marry? Of course I'll marry," I said suddenly, smiling radiantly. Everyone froze. Even Michael's eyes flickered with surprise, almost with hope. I stepped closer to him, tilted my chin up, and looked straight into his eyes. "Word by word," I said clearly. "Captain Reed, I agree to marry you. But I have one condition." "What condition?" he asked reflexively. My gaze slowly shifted past him to Anna White, standing just behind his shoulder. The corner of my mouth curled into a faint wicked smile. "My condition," I said sweetly, "is that Miss Anna will be our bridesmaid. And not only that, after we get married, I want her to move in and live with us. We'll be like real sisters. I'll take care of her personally. After all, she's the one who holds the most special place in your heart. As your wife, it's only right that I help share your burdens, isn't it?" When I finished, the entire courtyard fell into dead silence. Every single person stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Letting your husband's beloved white moonlight move in with you under your roof, and personally take care of her. What kind of lunacy was that?" Michael and Anna's faces had gone beyond ugly. The expressions they wore were a masterpiece of shock and mortification. They had come here planning to use Anna to corner me, to ruin my reputation, to make me the laughingstock of the whole compound. But instead I had flipped the game, shoving the burning hot potato right back into their own hands, in a way they could neither comprehend nor accept. If Anna agreed, she'd have to stand by and watch the man she loved marry another woman and live in the same house, watching us act like a happy couple day after day. That would be worse than death. If she refused, then why refuse? Weren't they innocent cousins as they so proudly claimed? If she turned down my kind offer, what would that imply? That she had something to hide? It was a dead end. A trap I'd built just for them. One that would force them to expose their own ugliness no matter which way they turned. Anna swayed on her feet, her face drained of all color. Then with a faint gasp, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed straight backward. "Anna!" Michael shouted, stumbling to catch her as she fell, his arms flailing in panic. The grand little show they'd so carefully orchestrated ended with the heroine fainting in humiliation. Cradling Anna in his arms, Michael fled under the weight of dozens of complex judgmental stares. As they left, Mrs. Reed threw me a venomous glare, her eyes full of hate as if to say, "Evelyn, just you wait." Oh, I was waiting all right. I was waiting to watch them step by step down the very road to ruin I had prepared for them. After that day, my reputation in the compound became completely divided. Some said I was sharp-tongued, unforgiving, and far from a gentlewoman. But others, especially the army wives, who had spent years suffering under domineering mothers-in-law, said I had done the right thing, that I had put those bullies in their place. Either way, one thing was clear. People now knew that Evelyn Quinn was not someone to be trifled with. The Reeds, for their part, went unusually quiet for several days. I enjoyed the peace, pouring all my focus into my studies. Picking up high school subjects again after 50 years wasn't easy, but I had something no one else in this era possessed. Decades of life experience, sharpened reasoning, and a mature way of thinking far beyond my peers. I created a strict study plan for myself, studying from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. Aside from meals and bathroom breaks, I practically lived buried in my books. My parents watched with both pride and worry, their hearts aching. Every day they found new ways to cook something delicious, trying to keep me healthy. That evening I was struggling through a particularly difficult math problem when my father knocked on the door and stepped in, holding an envelope in his hand. "Evelyn," he said, "the postman just delivered this. It's a letter from the capital." I froze for a second, taking the envelope from my father's hand. Across the front, in bold, elegant strokes, were the words, "To Evelyn Quinn." The handwriting was completely unfamiliar. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single thin sheet of paper. The message was simple, just one line. "He who wishes to wear the crown must bear its weight. The college entrance exam is near. Take care." There was no signature, only a small embossed gray emblem at the bottom, shaped like ashes, impossible to make out. I held the paper between my fingers, lost in thought. At this point in time, who could possibly be writing to me from the capital? In my previous life, my path had been so simple, so ordinary. I'd never had any connection to anyone important, certainly not anyone in the capital. Could my rebirth have triggered some kind of butterfly effect, altering events I couldn't yet see? I held the letter under the lamp, studying that faint gray emblem over and over. But no matter how long I stared, I couldn't decipher it. Eventually I gave up. Whoever sent it, friend or foe, the message itself was clear enough. They were right. The college entrance exam was approaching, and that was what mattered most now. I carefully folded the letter and put it away, then threw myself back into my studies. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, it was November. The government officially announced the restoration of the college entrance examination. The news hit China like a thunderclap in spring. Across the country, countless young intellectuals who had lost their youth to chaos wept and celebrated. For the first time in years, hope had returned. I registered immediately. But as I walked out of the registration office, I ran straight into Michael Reed. He had lost weight, his skin tanned darker. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions: anger, resentment, and something that looked strangely like regret. "You're signing up for the exam too?" he asked, his voice rough. "Can't I?" I replied coolly. He hesitated as if wanting to say more, but in the end only muttered through clenched teeth, "You'll never pass. Don't waste your time." Then he brushed past me and left. I watched his retreating back, and the corner of my lips curled into a cold smile. "You think I won't pass, Michael Reed? Just wait. I would not only pass the exam, I would be admitted to the best university in the entire country. I would rise to heights he could never dream of reaching. And from then on, he would have no choice but to look up to me for the rest of his life, regretting every single word he said today." The exams were scheduled for mid-December, held at the city's first high school. On the morning of the test, it was still dark when my parents got up to prepare breakfast for me: 2 boiled eggs and a steaming bowl of noodles. "Evelyn, don't be nervous," my mother said, her eyes red. "Just do your best. Even if you don't pass, you'll always be our pride." I nodded, finished my meal, and walked toward the exam hall under their hopeful gaze. Inside, the room was filled with faces, some familiar, some strange. There were teenagers barely in their teens and adults well into their 30s, but every single one of them carried the same burning look of longing and hope for the future. My own heart surged with emotion. When the bell rang and the test papers were handed out, I took a deep breath and tightened my grip on my pen. "Evelyn Quinn," I told myself, "this time live for yourself." When I finally walked out after finishing the last exam, snow had begun to fall. I looked up as white flakes drifted gently from the gray sky, fluttering down onto my face. The snow was cold against my skin, but it made me feel astonishingly awake. With this exam, I had finally put an end to all the regrets of my previous life. And from this moment on, my new life would officially begin. On my way home, I ran into Michael Reed again. He looked like he'd been waiting for me, standing beneath a bare poplar tree, his shoulders dusted with a thin layer of snow. "How did it go?" he asked. "Not bad," I replied briefly. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Evelyn, can we really never go back to how things were?" I couldn't help but laugh, as if he had just told the funniest joke in the world. Michael Reed, did you forget? I said with a cold smile. Who was it that stood right in front of me and said word for word that marrying me was the biggest mistake of his life? Who was it who, together with his mother, came to my door to humiliate me for the sake of his precious white moonlight? I let my smile fade, my eyes turning icy. What's the matter? Is your white moonlight not so sweet anymore? His face went pale. His lips moved as if he wanted to explain something, but I cut him off. I heard, I said slowly, that Anna White threw a fit at you recently. Said you were useless, that you couldn't even handle getting a wife. Then she ran back to the countryside, didn't she? But not before saying she'd wait until you made something of yourself in the city before coming back. I tilted my head slightly. That's what I heard anyway from a few of those gossip-loving army wives in the compound. Michael's face darkened to an ugly shade of greenish-gray. Clearly I'd hit every mark. You've been investigating me, he demanded through gritted teeth. I don't have that much free time, I said with a shrug. Your family's drama is just too loud. It's impossible not to hear about it. I stepped around him, ready to leave. Evelyn, he called after me, his voice breaking with a note of desperation. Do you really have to be this heartless? Were all these years between us fake? I stopped walking, but I didn't turn around. Love, I said softly, my voice carrying faintly in the wind. I let out a quiet laugh. Michael Reed, when you finally figure out what love really means, then you can come talk to me about it. And with that, I didn't look back. Step by step, I walked into the swirling snow toward my bright and boundless future. The days waiting for the exam results were agonizing, but also full of hope. And during that time, something unexpected happened in the military compound. Michael Reed's commanding officer, the stern and upright Colonel Yen, came to my house in person. He wasn't there for my parents. He was there for me. In my father's study, he got straight to the point. Comrade Evelyn Quinn, he said, looking me directly in the eye. I'm here today on behalf of the organization. I'd like to have a talk with you. I was a little surprised, but politely gestured for him to sit. I've heard about what happened between you and Captain Reed, he continued gravely. And I've also heard what you said at the compound gate, that you wanted to contribute to the nation's modernization efforts rather than just be a soldier's wife. Is that true? I nodded. It's true. Colonel Yan's expression softened with approval. Good. That's the kind of ambition a woman of the new era should have. He paused for a moment, then added, however, being a soldier's wife and contributing to the country are not mutually exclusive. Behind every outstanding soldier, there's an equally outstanding partner. I came today, he said, smiling slightly, to introduce you to someone. I blinked. What kind of bizarre plot twist was this? Colonel Yen, thank you for your kind intentions, but I don't. Be so quick to refuse, he interrupted with a wave of his hand. Then, opening his briefcase, he pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table toward me. Take a look at this first. The photo was black and white. It showed a young man in military uniform, standing tall and straight as a pine. His features were sharp and well-defined, his gaze cutting and fierce like an eagle's, so sharp it felt as though he could see right through a person. Even in profile, he radiated a kind of presence that was impossible to ignore. Something about him looked vaguely familiar. His name is Ryan Yen, Colonel Yen said, pride slipping subtly into his tone. He's my nephew, 28 years old. A major in a special operations unit in the capital. He came home to visit recently and I happened to mention you. He was quite impressed. Ryan Yen. The name clicked in my mind. That day, when Michael Reed and Anna White had made a scene outside my house, I'd noticed him among the crowd. A cold, composed face that had stood out even then. So it had been him, a major from the capital's special forces. Suddenly, my mind flashed to that mysterious letter. He who wishes to wear the crown must bear its weight. Could it have been from him? A storm rippled quietly through my thoughts, though I kept my expression calm. There was only one line written on the page. I'll be waiting for you in the capital. Welcome to my world. I stood there in the sunlight, staring at those words on the paper and smiled. Yes, a new world. One without Michael Reed, without Anna White, without the pain and shackles of my previous life. A brand new world. And I was finally stepping into it,